episode, I speak with the wise elder, Maha al Musa. Maha is a birth pioneer, activist, mentor, and educator. She's of Palestinian Lebanese origin, raised in Australia, and has been an independent international birth educator and mentor for almost 3 decades. Maha is the author of the award-winning world first book on belly dance for birth, Dance of the Womb, endorsed by Sheila Kitzinger, Dr. Sarah Buckley, Dr. Michel Odent, and others, as well as the producer of the award-winning video series of the same name. Maha is a mother to 3 beautiful children, now 14, 23, and 26. 2 were born at home, both as water lotus births, and her last birth was at the age of 46. All her births brought Maha into an alignment within her roots, lineage, and experiences to become her life's work. She was a breastfeeding advocate in worldwide media from 2012 to 2016. Her story of breastfeeding her daughter to 8.5 years went viral many times. She has been guiding women and mothers to connect to their sacred womb wisdom to envisage the birth that their baby and intuition is calling for. She has traveled to many countries teaching her acclaimed, unique, and inspirational embodied birth educator certification, having the last 3 years before COVID in China. Now at 60, she is thrilled to offer all her wise words in one place online in this exceptional and inspiring certification training. Please enjoy this wonderful interview with Maha that kept me sitting in awe for the whole duration of our conversation. Hello, Maha. Thank you so much for being on the Free Birthing in Color podcast. I'm very excited to have you here. You are the first wise elder that I am interviewing, so this is going to be really, really great to have you speak and share your story.
Thank you, Carmen. Lovely to be here.
So the first question, because I just want to get straight into it, is what I'm asking every woman that comes on the podcast is, what is your lineage and your ancestry that you are passing down to your children and to, all of the women that you have been working with all these years?
Well, you can probably hear I've got an Australian accent, but I'm not Australian. And who is Australian, besides the Indigenous Aboriginal people here, who I relate very much to. But my personal ancestry is Palestinian, Canaanite, Lebanese, Phoenician, and we have some Indian and Egyptian in our family line. So my mother's side is the Lebanese, Phoenician, and my father's side is the Palestinian, Canaanite. And my father was of Muslim background and my mother of Christian background. And that's my lineage, and as far as I know, because if you'd like me to go into my story, I was actually kidnapped from my mum as a 6-month-old baby by my dad. I knew you didn't know that. And my brother as well, he was 2.5. So I was born in Kuwait and my brother was born in Lebanon. And my mum and dad met in the 1950s. My mum came from a very liberated Lebanese family from Beirut, and my father was a Palestinian refugee in 1948 when Palestine became Israel. And 1 million Palestinians lost their homes and became refugees. And my father's family, he was one of 9, and his mother, Amina, and his father and our family lineage had lived in Palestine for a very long time until 1948, till they became refugees, and they had to run for their lives, literally. And he ended up in a camp in Jordan that was run by the United Nations or UNICEF, and they then went to Jordan in the, I think it was the early 1950s, and my mum became an air hostess because then my father had actually done his study as an accountant and he got a job with Arab Jerusalem Airlines. And he came to Jordan, and then there was a job happening at Kuwait Airways, and my mum as a Lebanese air hostess, my father as working in the airlines as an accountant, met. and he was creating the first fleet for the King of Kuwait in the 1950s.
Wow.
And my mum came as a new air host, new air hostess as staff, and that's how they met and got married. So this was a time in the 50s and the 60s, early 60s, where Lebanon was the Paris of the Mediterranean. It was an amazing meeting place, very different to, the history we know now from the 70s and 80s and 90s. But in the 50s and 60s, Lebanon was the place to be, the jewel of the Mediterranean. So that's how they met and married, and had my brother in 1960, and then I was born in 1962. And as I mentioned, 6 months later, they separated after I was born, and my dad basically kidnapped my brother and I from our mum. Yeah. And she didn't know where we were, what country we'd gone to, nothing. So I arrived in Australia as a 2-year-old with my father. So after he took us, I went to Jordan with him and went to see and live with his family. And my brother went somewhere else. We're not exactly sure where he went, but he ended up in England in the boarding school. Yeah. But my dad brought me to Australia when I was 2 in 1964 without my mum. And as I said, she didn't know where we were. She didn't know where to look, how to find us, any of those things. So you can imagine as a mother what that would have been like to just literally have your children taken, never to see them.
Wow.
So that was a huge, beginning to my early years. And I was at boarding school at 4 in Australia, in Victoria, in Ballarat Girls Grammar. In 1966, I was the youngest boarder, and my brother came and he was in boarding school as well. And then we had nannies and nurses and women came to look after us for the first 7 years of my life. So, which is the most important years of your life, is that first 7 years. So not having a mother had a huge impact on me, of course, and being kidnapped and taken from my mother as a little baby. So you'll understand as I piece these threads together why I've become the woman I have today, working as an international independent birth worker, an educator and mentor and activist. And what underlies all of my work as the founder of Embodied Birth and Belly Dance Birth is this story, as we all have a
Right. Are you still there? You've just frozen for a moment.
That is the premise of my work, is to keep mothers and babies together, because I am the product of the baby taken from the mother. So it's really, really been a very important, pinnacle story in my life to keep me in that essence of knowing that the mother-baby dyad, especially in those early years, is really important in terms of our attachment, our bonding, our receivership into the world, etc., etc. So this powerful story, unbeknown to me as a child, is what has led to this trajectory of the last almost 30 years as founder of Embodied Birth. So, and it is an unusual story for our culture to be taken in such a time of the early 60s. And when my dad was in Australia, there wasn't many single parents, let alone single fathers with children. So that was a huge thing for him as well. And I'm sure there must have been shame around that or guilt around that, taking us from our mother, etc. So, there's a feeling within me that I was always a little gypsy child looking for a home, trying to find, where do I belong? There's a Dr. Seuss book with the little chicken going, are you my mother? Are you my mother?
I remember that.
Yeah, and I've always felt like I was that little chicken going, are you my mother? Where is my place? So, but what my story gave me was the understanding that as humans, we are all part of a collective of spiritual beings. And really our home is everywhere. There's that lineage home, but there's the spiritual home that we all are connected to. And I think that's given me that sense of East meets West as well in my work, in who I've become in the work that I've done in the birthing. So, that so many threads to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was 7, my dad married my stepmother, who was Australian, came from a very Australian family. And she was only 23 when she met my dad, and I was 7, and he was in his 30s by then. So she was a very young mother to have. And, I remember being very excited when they got married because suddenly there was somebody give me attention,
Mm-hmm.
someone that I could sidle up to and read and show off to, and all of those things which had lacked. But one of the things I also didn't say is that my father was very abusive as well, emotionally, physically. That was very, very, very difficult for me. Being estranged from, as I say, the mother, my mother, the motherland, the mother tongue, and the mother within, as well as that mother without. So I've had a lot of trauma around the mother in those aspects. And my work in birthing has really worked, and my birth themselves, the births I've had, have really healed those aspects of the pieces of the puzzle that were needing to be brought all together to bring that wholeness. And I say that in embodied birth, that you are a whole woman birthing your whole baby in your wholeness and in your holiness. And that is what I also, as well as trying to keep mothers and babies together, is that holiness, that reverence, that honoring of not just the birth experience, but our stories. And we talk about that in embodied birth is the mystery, my story. What is meant for me? What is to be revealed to me through this journey of birthing? Nobody has a right to rob us or interfere in that spiritual, sacred journey that we take, that rite of passage, that ceremonial rite, because it is part of our lineage. And it's part of the repair, the healing, the recalibration, the re-alchemizing, the rebirth of not just as us as mothers, but for our children to be born through those portals of our challenges, of our joys, of our hardship, of our trauma, all of those things to rise through birth into the power that we hold as women, and that our children will carry through, because they are our legacy. They are what we leave to the world. So we say in embodied birth, what is the gift of this experience that you are gifting to the world? And this is why I do what I do after almost 30 years, is to keep the essence alive of the sacred lens of birth, and that we don't unnecessarily interfere in this, as I said, this rite of passage. This is for all women to claim her story, her voice, her lineage, her gifts, her power, her sovereignty. And this is what it's about. And as I walk through now, what are we, 2023? I look out there and I see so much information, so much education, so many offerings, yet we have the worst outcomes of physiological birth. This is the frustration that I've had. I've been teaching these golden codes and ethics for a very, very long time. This womb wisdom that every woman carries. And it feels like sometimes, is anybody listening? Is anybody really interested in this path? Because when we look at the world and we see the imprint that is out there, the evolution of humanity, and we look at the imprint, what do we see? Fear, anxiety, separation, non-cohesive relationships, abandonment, power over, greed, raping the earth. And I could go on and on and on. And then we look at the imprint of birth. How are babies being born? How are mothers being honored or not? And there's your answer. And it's a very difficult thing to contemplate that birth itself, the way we birth, the way our babies come into the world, has a huge impact on the consciousness of humanity. And so we look out at the world, and what do we see? All of those things that I just spoke about. How are we receiving babies? Are we receiving babies into the arms and hands of love, or into the trembling hands of fear? What are we doing in the birth arena that has a reflection and an impact on the external world? And most people, Karma, don't put the two together. It is very rare. I watch podcasts and I listen to people talking about all kinds of situations, atrocities, and all kinds of things in the world, mainly men, trying to work it all out. But I never, ever really hear anyone talk about the imprint consciousness that birth has in the world. It's left out of the picture, yet it has a major impact on the evolution of human beings.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And let's not even start with AI and the human, the hardware, the surrogate womb and the creating humans, you know. I mean, it's a huge, huge topic.
Yeah.
It's a huge, but women carry the power. The power is in the egg. The power is in the womb. The egg holds the power. And now we are freezing our eggs. We're giving away our eggs. And we're telling women, you're too, you know, you'll be too old to have babies at 35, so freeze your eggs. Where are these eggs going? Where are these eggs going? We can get sperm every minute of the day from anywhere, but we can't get the eggs. And I just want women to be aware of where are your eggs going.
Yeah.
And you're listening to this rhetoric that your eggs are going to be, by the time you reach 35 or 40, as I've heard, rotten. I've actually heard that your eggs will be not good enough to make a baby. At 35, and women are buying into this fear. So my work in embodied birth is come back to your instincts, your integrity, your intuition, your inner voice, and become aware in this transient world, this fast-moving world, of something, this thread that goes back thousands and thousands of years and comes to you. This gift that you've been given from your maternal lineage. How can you consciously and mindfully birth your babies, your ideas, your creativity, your voice, who you are into the world with this level of awareness without being pushed around through the mincer of fear?
Yeah.
Because that's what we have with women. Yeah, we listen to the voice of fear over our own instincts. And so these are the things that I teach in embodied birth, bringing it back home to your heart, your hands, your womb, your knowing, your baby, your creativity, your offering. What does that look and feel like? What is the essence of that? Trust in your vision. Trust in who you are. Trust in your value. This is what we don't do as well. We don't actually value women in the world.
Yeah.
Really, we don't value. We don't value women's voices, especially in the arena of mothering and motherhood and the maternal arena. We are actually devaluing her. We are dismantling her. And some women won't agree with that, but it's happening.
Oh, totally. It's absolutely happening. Yeah. Yeah.
So this work is very, very powerful, and it's not easy, Karma, after nearly 30 years of doing the work that I have done, to see the way of the world today in 2023. Sometimes I just wonder, does anyone care? Does anybody care about any of this? I sometimes wonder, and then I go back in my meditation and I just sit in those ancient roots, and I know, like the tree rooted to the earth, reaching to the sky, growing those branches, those parts of me that are earthed and grounded and solid in my integrity, in my knowing. And now at 60 years of age, 6 years post-menopause, now the vagina becomes the voice. Now the power comes, because I no longer care what people think.
Yeah.
So I'm not twisting myself into a pretzel and accommodating everyone else to be loved and liked. I don't care about that. It's the grandmother energy, the cloak of the grandmother energy I wear now, silken threads of that lineage. Yeah. There's a rapid movement for me now at 60, looking down the barrel of 70, 80, 90, my mortality. And there's saying, there's no time but now. There's no time like this. Keep your voice strong. Don't give up, but don't push. There's no need to push anymore. Just sit as that tree. And those who are meant to hear these messages, those who want to hear from the elder, those who want this wisdom will come. That's the difference with this age, of just being able to sit in oneself and trust. And whatever I teach in embodied birth, in my birth work, I must walk that path. And this is what I see too when I look out and reflect. People are teaching things that they're not walking. They're not listening to their own teachings. Yeah. In this fast-paced world of me, look at me, aren't I fantastic, aren't I wonderful? I mean, I often say I'm not an influencer. I'm a disruptor. I don't want to. I want to disrupt the system. I want the system of birth to wake up. I want women to wake up and claim, as I said, their sovereignty, and know that their body knows how to give birth, that they are the experts, that they are at the center of the experience with their own expertise. And we have a voice. If we need help, we need assistance, we need guidance, we can ask for that. We're not disembodied. We are a whole woman in our holiness. Operate from that place and find your power in that. That's what the world needs today. That's what the world needs today. And more than at any other time that I can see, birth is that power place. It is that pinnacle moment that underlies, as I said before, love consciousness. How do we want the world to look? That is the way we birth our babies. That takes a lot of strength, a lot of willpower, a lot of integrity to hold that vision and go for it. First and foremost, it doesn't mean that you never need help, as I said. Sometimes we do, sometimes we need assistance, sometimes we need intervention, but we are putting that default of the expert as our number one go-to. And that's what I'm to say here. You are the number one default go-to. Your heart, your womb, your wisdom, your baby. That will tell you everything that you need. And it's not even a matter of going with the flow. Oh, we'll just see what happens in birth. No, arm yourself with the resources and the information, whatever it is that you need. Bring you back to that quiet voice within that knows birth. And I often say that there are 9 words that really scare the medical profession. And those 9 words are, I know what I am doing as a mother.
Yes.
I know what I'm doing as a mother. Shock, horror. How can you know what you're doing? You can't possibly know. I know better than you. And saying embody birth, don't start with what's impossible. That's that military medical system, always putting in fear into what's impossible, what could go wrong, what might happen. How about we start with possibility? What is possible on this journey, this revelation? What is meant to pass me by, not pass me by, what is meant to come to me? So then when we use the movements of belly dance births, I'm going to go into that, excuse me. So we start to use those ancient spirals and circles and figure 8 movement, that geometry, that language of birth, the language of woman, the language of the feminine, the language of life. So when we are in our pregnancy time and our baby is growing, an expanding womb and belly and baby, what else is growing? The physical, but the energetic body, emotional body, the psychic body. What is it that I see, I intuit, I hear, I feel? What are those things speaking to me? What is speaking through me? And then when I do these beautiful movements of the spiral and the circle movement, I move into this expansion. I move into the vocabulary of my womanhood, my womb self. And then I create expansion. So physically, I'm expanding and growing, and so is my baby, but so too am I energetically expanding. This is a beautiful time for us to see the visions. Imagine if the world honored these visions. Can you imagine how different things would look and be? And it's not even about a perfect outcome or a perfect birth or any of that. It's your story. My story, mystery. This is a mystical, transcendent, transformational experience of the higher self.
Yeah.
Yet all women worry about, and all we were all worrying about is, oh, I've got to get this baby out. Of course, this baby has to be birthed. But how and why and where? What are the things that need to be shown for you in your life journey with this baby? So into the expansion, and we say in embodied birth, then when we are in labor and we're using these beautiful movements, upright, using gravity, or sitting on a birthing ball, or lying on our side, however your body needs to be, your body is always speaking to you with your baby. You don't need somebody to tell you how to move or where to go or move this leg or that or this or no. Become embodied and listen through the expansions of these beautiful ancient intuitive birthing movements. Then you will know. You know what to do. So there's no fear. And if I have fear, then I move through my fear. I'm not birthing in fear. I'm birthing through these fears because I'm expanding and I'm meeting whatever arises. I can meet it through the breath, through sound, through movement. And that's where I build my confidence. And that's why embodied birth and belly dance birth is a powerful birth preparation, because it is probably, I would say, the only birth preparation that I know, and I am biased because I created this and, brought it in through the lineage, that actually is a reflection of what we need to do in birth.
Yeah,
These are the
absolutely.
things, movements and the sound and the breath and meeting myself and meeting my baby. So we call the rhythms of birth, which are called contractions of the uterus. They are the rhythms and sensations of the womb and of birth. And they are expansions. So we don't call these contractions. We use the language of opening, surrendering, releasing, and moving into and through these portals, these layers of the body where we meet parts of ourselves. And when our labor stops, when we're in physiological, uninterrupted birth, it doesn't mean that something has gone wrong. Sometimes we need to stop at that gateway, chew it, feel, and integrate what is opening. Where is my resistance? Can be an emotional memory that's risen up through the layers of the body. And now there's an obstacle there. And if I'm with people who understand the nature of birth as a rite of passage, as I'm transitioning and moving through, they will be able to hold me in that, be with me, with woman, as I'm with my own woman, so I can navigate through, so I can speak my truth if that's what's needed, so I can cry, so I can open that gateway and move through again to the next layer. And this is what women are robbed of, karma, every single day. We say in embodied birth, 360,000 women are birthing every single day. How many of them, take a guess, have the opportunity to birth like this? How many do you think?
I would say like one. It's not a lot.
One. That's right.
Yeah.
So then, going back to what I was saying, what have we just robbed the world of? 359,000 possibilities of raising consciousness on a daily level. Now I feel like crying. I feel it in my bones. I feel it deeply in my tissue, in my blood, in my veins, as a woman who has birthed this powerful way.
Yeah.
Through my body, through my resistance, through my obstacles, through my kidnapping, through my separation from my mother, through all of those things, each of my 3 births opened me, this consciousness that I have the world with. That is my frustration every single day.
Yeah.
Every single day I teach this work, and women would rather, because of the fear-mongering, get their C-section in, or look to the obstetrician, or listen to the wife, or, as I said, give the default of their expertise to somebody else, or wait for permission. We are all robbed. The whole world is robbed. The whole world.
Yeah.
And it's difficult when you have had these experiences of birth and many of us are just a voice in the wilderness, because most women have been robbed of this experience. Never ever talk about emergencies or necessity of interference or, necessary help of the medical kind. Never. But what I'm talking about is standing back, allowing the song and dance of birth to unfold in its entirety before we jump in and try to do something, to be useful as a birth keeper, virtue signal. I see these videos, Karma, and they drive me nuts. People send them to me all the time, of a woman in a hospital and she's in labor, and the midwife is there's about 3 or 4 midwives and an obstetrician and maybe a doctor, and they're all dancing in a silly way with her, and they kind of center themselves, and it's though it's a gimmick. Oh, look at us, we're dancing with the mother, aren't we fantastic? And she's trying to follow steps, and it drives me nuts.
Me too. Yeah.
And in belly dance birth, we don't teach choreography. There's no steps to birth. We can't choreograph birth. In 1 minute, I'm forward leaning and moving, and the next minute I'm like breathing, and the next minute I'm asleep. In the next minute I'm up again. I'm just following. That's the dance of birth. Following the rhythms and sensations of my body and my baby, listening and that intuiting. It's not a choreography that others come in and make a stupid dance about it. And it really does drive me nuts. And I tell people, don't send me that stuff. That's not what I teach. Just because I teach dance and movement, it's not the Western way of how you perceive dance and movement. This is coming from our earth roots.
Yeah, you're teaching sacred dance, ancestral movement, not choreography based off of bullshit.
That's it. And in many ways, having given my work originally the name or the tag belly dance birth, maybe now when I look back, I think maybe I shouldn't have done that. That's why we changed it about 8 years ago to embody birth. But we learn the movements of the belly dance birth, the ancestral dance, but it doesn't mean you're dancing for an audience out there, for the male gaze out there. No, you and your baby, that improvisational, intuitive dance that we play music and we just get into our body and feel. Yeah, we say in embodied birth, the baby doesn't come out of your head. The baby in physiological birth comes through your womb, your pelvis, your vagina. So get down to earth to birth. It's not an intellectual experience at the end of the day. You can't think your baby out. You must feel your baby out. And too much of this education is intellectual. Who cares how many centimeters dilated you are at the end of the day? Who cares how many weeks you are? Of course, if you're premature baby, which I had my first son. But what I'm saying is these measurements and these containing the birth in limitation, it's not what's the most important. The most important is that the mother is connected to her baby and her wisdom and her knowing. That's why the dance and the movement and the embodiment is so, so powerful. And once you start doing this, you don't actually need anything else. You don't actually need anything else because it's all contained within you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the tenements of embodied birth and belly dance birth. This is what I've been teaching and, trying to reach the younger women today who are saturated with information. So it's about letting go, unpeeling those layers, not getting overwhelmed, and coming back to yourself. And what is my maternal lineage? What have I inherited? And my paternal lineage. Now, in my paternal lineage, my father's mother, Amina, we had our own birthing house in our village in Palestine.
Wow.
The village, called Al-Kubab. And there was our birthing house. And my grandmother, Amina, would go on a horse and cart when she was pregnant with her other little baby. She had 9. So whoever was born would go with her, and she'd go over the cobblestones of that in the horse and cart, and that would bring the labour on. And then she'd come to the birthing house and the midwife would come. and she would birth her baby with all her children around and be looked after for that 40 days and nights and go back home. And that's the legacy that I come from.
Mm.
And I feel that. I know it. I just
Mm-hmm.
know it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came to give birth to my babies, I drew on her strength.
Mm-hmm.
I drew on her power because I knew it was in me too. Even though it was the paternal side, I didn't know the lineage.
Mm-hmm.
So her power became my power. And that's what I say to women I'm teaching and with my programs and all the things I offer. Draw on my strength. I'm with you, as is all the women who've come before. We all are part of that lineage, red thread that we call maternal power. And yes, not all had, whatever we call positive or good birth, some traumatized. But that's the opportunity that we have, as I said before, to reclaim that and to rebirth that part of our lineage. Yeah. And, I've written this beautiful book here. I'll show you. I know the podcast won't be able. It's called Dance of the Womb. It's an award-winning world first book on belly dance for pregnancy and birth. And it's a beautiful book.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I wrote, it's a beautiful book, hard copy or an ebook on my website, Dance of the Womb. It was endorsed by Dr. Michel Odent, Sheila Kitzinger, Dr. Sarah Buckley, and my follow-on, well, it used to be a DVD, now it's a video series.
Okay.
46, pregnant with my daughter, birthed at home. And I go through all the movements from the book onto the video. And my home birth film at 46 is on there as well. I've got a beautiful belly dance birth bundle. And, this is the other thing, is that drives me crazy, where women are told, as I was saying before, 35, you're too old. I mean, honestly, in Lebanon, as my friend Noelle says, she's Lebanese, in the villages in Lebanon, women were having babies into their 50s. Where is this ludicrous notion that once you get to a certain age, it's cut off? We know why they do that. To disempower women, disembody women for money, for greed, for power over.
Absolutely.
If you do this deep work, you don't need the voice of that expert telling you to cut off from yourself. Yeah. So that's what we need to teach women. First and foremost, build the foundation of you and your own knowledge from your family line. And, this is very, very powerful work. So, I had a baby at 46 and people say, wow, you had a home birth at 46. You're very brave. And I think to myself, there's no way I would have gone into hospital. There's nothing wrong with me. If I could get pregnant naturally, that my body could conceive naturally, why on earth can I not birth naturally? This is, again, our default. But what if something goes wrong? And I say, what about if everything goes right? Start at the top of the ladder and go higher. Where could I go to on this journey? And that also then informs the menopause. So my menopause is informed by my menstruation passageway and my birthing passageway and my mothering passageway. Now, I'm not saying every woman wants to do it naturally. Everyone has a choice now. But what I'm saying is to just go a bit deeper. And what is your contribution to the evolution of consciousness for humanity? Think about it like that.
Yeah.
And see what comes.
Wow.
So, yeah, being an inspiration, not an influencer, being a disruptor of the norm, the normal way of seeing things, and to also know that I've birthed in those depths. I dive deep into the ocean of myself with my children to understand birth as a sacred initiation. And that's what interests me. And anybody who wants to know birth in that way, they're the women that will come. You know, it's not about trying to convince anyone or push anyone or make anybody. It's just if you feel that resonance and in your body, do you feel it? And sometimes, Karma, it's interesting. I often get the women having their second, third baby because of what's happened from the first birth. And that's when they're seeking. There must be something more than this or this trauma or this intervention or this interruption. There has to be more than this. And I am more than this as the founder of Embody Birth, Belly Dance Birth, as a woman, as a mother. I'm not a midwife. I'm a midwife, but I'm not a midwife or a doctor or an obstetrician. I've traveled the world teaching obstetricians and midwives. The last 3 years before COVID, I was in Japan twice. I went to Japan and I went to China 5 times before 2019, before COVID happened.
Wow.
And I was going through all hospitals. I was sponsored and I was teaching all this work. And they would say to me, you are teaching us about love. Teach us about love. It is, because the hormone oxytocin, the greatest hormone that is delivered to us in our bodies, oxytocin, is the love hormone, is the bonding hormone. Birth is about love, about connection. It's about bonding, attachment. We are mammals. We are not meant to be separated from our mother. We are wired for that love. Look for that love. And there's many reasons for that. I won't go into that now. There's very deep psychological reasons for that, as well as biological pathways. That's what we need to come home to, our hearts, and connecting our hearts. And when I'm teaching, and I said before, I've been Japan, China, America, India. I spoke at the Human Rights in Childbirth Conference in India. I was a keynote speaker. In New Zealand, Australia. I've wanted to travel to all the different countries, but been raising 3 kids and can't always get everyone. My children are now 14, 23 and 26. So I've been on this trajectory for some time. But teaching about love, the way we teach about love is asking the professionals to take off their label. Take off your midwife. Take off your label, obstetrician. Take off your label, doctor. Just take off those labels. And who are you? Who sits before me as a mother, as a human being, human, spirit to spirit? Who are you? That's what I want to know. When I'm birthing in that energetic space of expansion, who is with me? Not the label. Who are you at your core? That I need to know. And it's very rare for us to know that person because they hide under the profession.
Yeah.
And it's important that we talk about what's behind the label.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Everything you said is just, it's so beautiful. And I didn't want to interrupt because just hearing the transmission of what you're bringing forth resonates with me so deeply, because this is exactly how I feel about birth. And it's exactly the way that I get my downloads coming in from, you know, my ancestors and my guides and whatever about the way that I need to be and the way that I am doing my birth work. So it just feels so, hearing you speak these words was giving me chills and like lighting me up and just making me understand and know that like, yeah, I'm on the right path. I'm doing the right thing. And hearing from you, as I said, you're the first wise elder that I've had on this podcast, just all of the knowledge and the wisdom and the wealth that you carry within you. I can just feel it like penetrating into my body and filling my cells. And I hope that everyone else that's listening and watching this gets that same feeling too, because it's so enlivening, and it makes me just know that, you know, the work that you're doing in the world is so impactful, and the words that you say, the way you speak about birth, how it's not just, you know, it's not in the head. Birth is how you feel. It's in the body. It's through the pelvis. It's through the vaginal canal. It's through that portal, is so true. And it's so heartbreaking that so many women don't understand that. And, you know, there was a piece of you saying how there's so many like birth education courses, and we're going to teach you how to birth your baby. We're going to teach you how to do this, when it's like, yeah, that's great to get to know like how your body works in birth. That is something nice to know, but it really truly is something that you can't learn. You have to feel, you have to intuit, you have to be in that present moment and trust yourself. You have to let go of the fear and really surrender into your body, which for me sounds like the best thing ever. And I don't have any children now, but my partner and I, we always talk about the connection we have with our spirit baby, and she's guiding me in this beautiful journey of like recalibrating myself and being able to hold the capacity of her spirit in my body. And it makes me so excited to know that I'll be able to go on this journey of birth, of feeling her come through my body in this journey of birth, in like the ways that you're explaining, feeling my body, moving my body, and having an experience like that will be so in touch and in tune with myself and with her when she does come through. And it makes me so excited to birth. Like, the way that I feel about thinking about bringing my baby in this world, I wish every woman thought this, you know, they shouldn't be scared to go into a hospital and like, oh my gosh, it's my only option. I have to do this. I have to, you know, my midwife will only let me do this. So this is how I have to birth my baby. Women shouldn't have these thoughts. They shouldn't have the doubts. They shouldn't have the fear. They shouldn't have the what ifs. It should be, I'm so excited. Like, I'm not even anywhere near the realm of bringing her through yet, but I'm still so freaking excited for when she comes through, because I know everything that you've said, as you've talked about embodied birth and as you've talked about just birth in general, is true. And like, I will be able to feel those emotions. I'll be able to feel that within my body. And hearing you say it and reiterate it is the information that women need to be hearing when they're before pregnant, in their conception times, even, you know, when they're still bleeding around their first bleed. Like, this is the information that needs to be shared to the maidens, so that when they get into their way of mothering, they already have it and it's already in their mind's eye, and it's something that they're looking forward to. So I'm just so grateful that you just gave that beautiful transmission and just like filled this space, filled me with these amazing words of what you do. It's so inspiring and so powerful to hear this from you, from a wise elder, from a woman that has not only been living this for the past 30 to 40 years, but like you said, embodying it. It's coming through you. I can see it. I can feel it. It's a heart transmission. It's literally coming from your heart and your soul as you express this. And it's so wonderful. Like, it just, yeah, it gives me the chills in my body, and I'm just so grateful to hear this direct from you. So thank you so much for that. That's wonderful.
Oh, beautiful, darling. And that's the power of this sacredness of birth, and it is poetry in motion. That's what birth is. Poetry in motion. And we say in embodied birth, the living book is within. Read her. You are writing those chapters of your book, your lineage. You know, that's what we're doing. But because birth is undervalued and interfered with, we don't see it in the capacity of the spirituality that it provides us. But there are all these other modalities that people do that are highly spiritual. I mean, ecstatic dance, cacao ceremonies, therapeutic massage, all these other things that we do with our bodies that have a higher value than actual birthing a human being. I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
And the other thing is too, that we talk about in embodied birth, this whole free birth thing, this free birth movement, which is a wonderful movement, yes, but as a maternal feminist, as I call myself, every single woman should birth in her freedom. Every woman needs to birth in her freedom, because I'm not free. If my sister is not free, how can I be free? If I have a free birth, or I have a home birth, or a water birth, a lotus birth, which I've had all those things, and yes, they were powerful and wonderful, and I'm so grateful, but I'm not free. I'm not liberated until all my sisters are liberated. That's where we're wrong. This is not about me and mine and my individual story either. On a bigger scale, yes, it is the mystery and the my story for me, but when that radiates out into the consciousness of the world, that liberation of the feminine is coming through the freedom to birth, where, how, when, with whom I choose. That's the true liberation. I am walking on my path. I'm not convincing anyone. I'm not defending myself. I'm not justifying myself. I'm just walking that path in my freedom. And birth has become a very competitive field with all of these, as I said, these programs and ways of doing it, what have you. Take all that away. Every single woman must birth in her freedom. I don't care if you're Chinese, Japanese, Jamaican, Arab, Australian, Aboriginal, Spanish. We all must birth in our freedom. That's the liberation of birth.
Yes.
And I think that's where we need to be going as a collective voice and vision. Not each individual pathway. Yes, they all make part of the whole, but what is the ethic that we have at the intention that we're working together is to free up birth, free up women, free up this knowledge, free up this power that we all carry, regardless of how we do it, as long as I felt free. And even if I choose to have a C-section, or I choose to have drugs, whatever I've chosen, was I free in that choosing? Was I honored and respected and revered in that choice? That's the key to this. And that's part of what I spoke about at the Human Rights in Childbirth Conference in India when I spoke. That is what we're getting to, or we're meant to be. And sometimes I look out and I see the division and the separation. And I say, as a collective, what are we working toward? That's for me, my vision. It's my manifestation. It's liberation through birth. As I'm now walking the path of menopause, which is a whole other area, the deepest part of the womb, unknown part of the womb, powerful, the most powerful. The rebirth of self, the rebirth of the liberated voice of self. That's what menopause is. And that's another area I really want to work in when I get time to. But it's the same thread. It's a continuum. It's the continuation of that thread. Yeah, we're not parts of ourselves. We're not parts of women. We're whole women. And birth is taken out of our life journey. It's part of it. You can't take the aspect of birth and chop it off and put it over here and dice it up. That's what happens with the birth journey. No, it's a part of the puzzle of me and my sisters and the whole, holiness, the liberation, the freedom. Yeah. And I think sometimes, Karma, and I know we're doing ancestral voices and we're doing women of color. This is actually the essence of our truth. And for me, growing up in the West, I've never felt that I fitted in. I've been teaching this for a long time, decades. And I feel sometimes like I'm hitting my head against the brick wall. Is anybody listening? It's known to me through my lineage. And it's like I look out and I think, where do I place this knowledge? Who do I give it to? Are women ready for it? You know, so because what I see is a battle. I see women going into birth with the sword and the shield, and they're in the battle. That's not birth. That's how you open. That's tension. That's constriction. That's not freedom. That's not surrender. That's not peace. That's what I see is happening. So back to the tree, rooted to the earth, holding the knowledge, and the women will come. And I've got to remind myself of that, because sometimes I get very frustrated. How, when I look at social media and I look at the saturation and everything, and I think, how do the women plow through all of that? How do they know who's who in this jungle? Yeah. And it takes a lot of mindfulness to just be able to just sit back and trust that the women that need this will come. And I love what you're doing, because this language that we speak is a whole vocabulary. It's not just a word here and there. It's a whole library. And you're bringing the library to the world as women of colour and women of these ancestry, from the East to the West, which is what I've always felt that I've done. East, West. And I'm grateful for my education. I'm grateful that I have the opportunities of the West, but my East is just as powerful. Now we bring the two together, and we have a lot of power in that.
Yeah.
You know, so in saying all of that, if anyone's interested in my embodied birth, like to
oh, wait, before we get into that, I do have one question for you. Because you said that when you were kidnapped from your father, or kidnapped by your father, pardon, from your mother at 6 months old, and you said at the beginning of this talk, it really shaped who you are and how you do this work. So how did it, all those decades ago, did this idea of embodied birth come to you? Where did that come from? Like, where was the very foundation of building this that you're doing?
Well, as I always say, my birth work started in my mother's womb. That's the seed right there in that egg. That's where it's. When I found my mum at 33 and went to Lebanon, I had been trying to get pregnant for 5 years. It's all in my book, my story. But I'd been trying to get pregnant for 5 years. I was told you'll never get pregnant naturally. You've got polycystic ovaries, which is a very common. Now they know it's related to insulin and high glycemia and all of that, glycemic index. At the time, in 1990, when I was diagnosed, it wasn't really known about. But I always felt deep inside that it was something to do with that separation from my mother, this inability to conceive or receive. I say conceive, receive. Receive my baby, receive the sperm of my partner, just be in receivership. I had a blockage there. And in 1995, I went to Lebanon with my brother and met my mum for the first time.
Wow.
I'd been trying to get pregnant for 5 years, and 6 months after meeting my mum, I got pregnant. My first son. And that's when I realized that this journey that we go on, trying to conceive, and all the labels that are given from the medical fraternity, is much deeper than what we're told. And it is up to us to take self-responsibility for our health and wellness, emotional, spiritual, physical, and do the deep work.
Yes.
Yes, we can go for pills and potions and surgeries and freezing eggs and doing all that, but to walk the path of deep excavation takes the work of piecing together the parts of me to make the whole. That's when I think I had the realization that this is powerful work. And then after the birth of my first son, which we will talk about on the next podcast, because it's a very interesting story of my first son, who's 26. He was born 6 weeks premature. So it helped to heal and repair. And it was through his birth that then the ball really started to roll and the awareness and the awakenings happened within me. And I thought to myself, why don't we hear all that I've spoken to you about today, this aspect of the journey and the ceremonial rite? Who's telling this side of it? Where do we go to hear this? Because the first place we go is into the medical world, to the doctor. That's our reference point, and that should not be our first reference point. So the way we step into the journey is the way we move through it. And I wanted to provide women with my personal story and my lived experience, but to hand it back to them to investigate and excavate down deep into this, stories that are never really told. And sometimes, Carmen, it's interesting because sometimes you'll hear women who've had these transformational births, they feel they can't speak about them because of women who haven't. And that, again, is not part of the freedom that I'm talking about. We should all be free and heard and understood and listened to on this path. And that's part of that freedom.
Absolutely.
No one's better. No, we don't value something as better or worse or good or bad or judgment, but we look with curiosity, externally and internally. We must always stay curious. And of course, there are biological and physiological facts that happen through the birth process. For the baby, we need to also look at the baby's experience. The baby's experience at a C-section is very different from an uninterrupted, spontaneous, vaginal, physiological mammalian birth. That just is. But it's not saying that I'm better or you're worse. It's just saying these are the things that occur that way, and these are the things that occur this way.
Yeah.
Curious about that, investigate that, find out about that. Yes, so that's really where it started for me.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited to hear your birth stories when we come back and record another episode, because I know there's just going to be so much amazing wisdom, power, innate knowledge, ancestral coding in what you have to say with those experiences, and how you share them with the world. Wow, thank you so much for speaking. I could listen to you talk forever. So it's just it's so beautiful. It's music to my ears. It really just like hits that deep part in my soul of truth that I can just feel it, and I know the words you say are the truth, and it's so beautiful. So I'm so grateful you were able to share that with me and with everyone that's going to see and watch this. So if you want to say how women can reach you if they want to get deeper into your work, they want to work with you, they want to do this embodied birth, they want to hear you talk and just get more connected with you, please share all of your information.
Oh, thank you, darling. Well, it's been an interesting last few years since COVID, because everything I did was in person, basically. I mean, I'd written my book and I was teaching workshops and I was teaching my certification, teacher training, embodied birth, belly dance birth, teacher training, all in person. And then it was funny because when COVID happened, about a month before, I had recorded a birth preparation program, unbeknown to me that I was going to get locked in the house for 2 years, basically. And we just released it. So it was Embody Birth, Unlock and Awaken Your Ancestral Womb Wisdom, a 4-module, 21-chapter birth preparation program. So that went up online, and then COVID happened. So it was great because I was able to market and sell and promote that. And I've got lots of teachers now in Vietnam. It really took off in Vietnam. And some amazing stories from Vietnam. We've had the first lotus water natural birth from an embodied birth teacher in Vietnam in a hospital ever.
Wow.
We made history, in Vietnam. So I've got about 30 teachers there that all did my online module training. And I've got other teachers as well and mothers who bought that program. And then I decided to do, instead of doing my 4-day in-person, which I couldn't do, I decided to put it on as a Zoom. So we created those educator training videos as part of my certification teacher training. So we've got the 4 modules program and the educator training videos, and together they have become the online self-paced body birth educator training. So you can come and do that training, and then you can become an embodied birth teacher. And the third part of that is a one-on-one Zoom with me. So there's 3 parts to that.
Okay.
So the 4 modules, the educator training, and a one-on-one Zoom with me, and then you get a certificate and you can go out and teach embodied birth. All that I'm talking about and more, and the belly dance birth as well. And you don't need to be a dancer. You don't need to, as we were saying, know how to dance. It's the embodied movement. And I say, if you've got a heartbeat, you can dance. The rhythm is in you. So you don't worry about that. And then I've got a beautiful belly dance birth bundle, which is my all the videos, all the belly dance birth dances, my home birth film at 46, warm-up stretch, e-cards, meditation. There's a few other things in that bundle. That's $99 US on my website. I also do counseling and mentoring for mothers-to-be, doulas, anybody who wants to come and be emotionally supported and held. I'm very intuitive in my counseling. I can see things and I can feel and intuit. And women say what I teach or what I share in that is transformation. It's transformation. It's not really counseling, but it's called counseling. It's I want to have transformation. I can see you and help you with that. So they're the things that I provide. But the main thing is the online certification, the 4 modules, birth preparation, the counseling. I always love to collaborate. I've taught on other people's schools as well, online schools. If anyone wants to sponsor me to come and teach workshops. And I'm going back to China in November for the first 4 years, which is incredible. And I'm moving into sacred sexuality, embodiment, and conscious relationships. A new area I'm going into. Because people say to me, you're not just teaching about birth, you teach us about life, how to claim ourselves as women in our lives. So birth is just, one aspect, but it's the rebirth of self, So that's kind of I'm a healer, I guess, light worker. And it just so happened that birth was the arena that I went in, but I feel myself being pulled into menopause, conscious sexuality, relationships, all of those things.
That's beautiful.
Through the wiser lens, So my website is mahalmusa.com. You'll probably leave that.
Yeah, I'll put everything in the show notes,
Yeah, and my Instagram, mahalmusa.com as well. So I always, love to collaborate and work with women, especially younger women. I'm always trying to reach younger women and women of color and women of my ancestry. And I just hope that this area really does grow, because I think for us that have been colonized and brought to Western countries, it's a very particular grief in terms of our own value and self-esteem and our place in the world. We've been fractured and fragmented, and I know that deeply. So time for us as a collective to come together. So I don't know, Karma, maybe we can talk about something there too, the podcast, but I think there's more. There's more to.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get into that one day too. Yeah.
There's an open gap there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
me. Thank you so much.
Amazing. This was just so, as I keep saying, so enlivening, so expanding, so much wisdom. And yeah, I'm so grateful to have you on. I can't wait to speak to you again, hear more of your stories. And yeah, just thank you so much, Maha, for everything that you do, everything that you're doing. I'm so grateful and excited to see what you're going to be moving into. Yeah, you're just, like I keep saying, the wise elder, and you really are that embodied wise elder, because we have lots of elder people in the world, but they haven't collected their wisdom, and you have it. You're there, and you're sharing that, and you're gifting that. And like you said, reaching out to the younger generations, it's so lovely to have someone like you that I can look up to and I can learn from, and I can sit at the feet of you and take in all of this beautiful information and this beautiful soul feeling and energy that you give out. So this is such an honor for me to have this and to have you here and to speak with you. And I hope that we can continue in a friendship. And yeah, because
For sure. Just on a funny note, you just reminded me, Karma, my daughter who's 14, she's absolutely gorgeous, pure blood, untouched by anything. And she's very special. We all say that as mums, but she is the darling, and amazing at 60 to have a 14-year-old. But she says to me, you know, Mum, when people meet you and they talk to you, they say to me how amazing you are and you're, you know, this and that. But she says, just to me, I've heard it all. You're just my mum.
Yeah.
She keeps me grounded. I love her. You know, so yeah, she's a beautiful girl.
Aww.
So I'm just a mum.
Yeah, no, I love that. You're just a mum and so much more. So
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Lots of love.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sisters, so much for listening to this episode of the Free Birthing in Color podcast. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one in a primal activation session, donate to the podcast, or to have your story featured here or in the blog, go to primalwomanportal.com for all the information to do so. Did you want to connect with our guest speaker? You can find all her information linked within the show notes. And if you have time, please subscribe, write a review, and tell a friend to have a listen so that this podcast and these stories of women birthing in their total power can be shared far and wide. Don't forget to check out the show notes for information on the Earth Daughters Women's Festival, the Breach Without Borders workshop, and much more. New episodes drop every Thursday morning, so stay tuned for the next amazing story to be shared on any platform that you prefer to listen to your podcasts on, or watch these episodes on the Free Birthing in Color YouTube page. And remember, your voice and your story matters. So if you're a woman of color or an Indigenous woman who's had a wild pregnancy and or birth outside of the medical system, submit your story, because it's so important that your voice is heard and celebrated in your radical journey of pregnancy, birth, and motherhood.